Cine crede că Rusia luptă în Ucraina doar cu arme convenționale, se înșeală. Atacurile cibernetice pe care rușii le fac încă de dinainte de a invada pe ucraineni nu s-au oprit deloc. Dimpotrivă, sunt îndreptate nu doar spre vecinii pe care vor să-i ocupe, ci și spre aliații lor. Doar că atunci când te ajută Occidentul, câștigi mereu. Asta spune Kersti Kaljuilaid, fostul președinte al Estoniei, o țară care a avut de multe ori de suferit de pe urma hackerilor ruși. Aceste atacuri hibride vor fi mereu parte din viața noastră, trebuie doar să ne pregătim și să învățăm să trăim cu ele. Aflăm imediat detalii despre experiența estoniană. Sunt Cristina Cileacu, începe Pașaport diplomatic. Kersti Kaljuilaid, former president of Estonia, welcome to Diplomatic Passport.
Thanks for the invitation.
Progresul a fost mereu împiedicat de neștiință, lipsă de încredere în ce poate aduce transformarea, dezinteresul față de munca pe care o presupune și multe alte motive. Doar că singurul efect al acestor piedici este întârzierea, pentru că evoluția nu poate fi oprită. În cazul digitalizării, avantajele pe care le aduce pentru oameni sunt multiple, dar poate cel mai important este câștigul de timp personal. Ce înseamnă de fapt servicii digitale pentru cetățenii unui stat? Autoritatea creează o platformă unde, cu un singur cont personalizat, un om are acces la chestiunile administrative pe care le are de rezolvat, de la plata impozitelor la obținerea de avize de la primării, achiziția de numere noi pentru mașină și așa mai departe. Semnătura este electronică, criptată, deci sigură, iar dosarul cu șină și ștampila lipsesc cu desăvârșire. La această platformă publică se pot conecta și furnizorii de servicii private. Scopul este același, îmbunătățirea vieții oamenilor. Este dificil pentru o țară să pună în practică această transformare digitală a sistemului administrativ? Ușor nu este, dar nici misiune imposibilă, având în vedere că sunt deja exemplele funcționale ale altor state care și-au digitalizat administrația.
President, many politicians are talking about digitalization in order to transform the life of the citizens, but you told me in a previous interview we did in Estonia while you were the president of the country that sending emails with attachment is not digitalization. Estonia has had a transformation in this sense. What does it take for a country to transform its system?
It takes courageous leadership. First and foremost, the courage to tell top-down that we will do this and in the future you will reap some benefits, like you don't have to visit government offices, and then you have to onboard the private sector. This is very much the secret of the Estonian recipe. We didn't do it alone. Actually, it is the consortia of banks, Swedish banks, by the way, operating in Estonia, who is responsible for the technical application of Estonian digital ID, mobile ID and smart ID to this day. So it has always been a public-private cooperation. Government has created the legally permissive space so that the services could be digitized. And each and everybody who wants can actually use this platform for their services. What is this platform? Actually, it is a system where you are able to sign digitally, communicate in an encrypted format, and also timestamp your signature. Basically, it's a passport online, nothing else.
Nothing sophisticated.
No.
EU has a strategy, it is called Digital Decade, and it's supposed by 2030 to digitalize infrastructure, to have a digital infrastructure, to digitalize the businesses, public services, but also to have professionals and, of course, better skills at the level of the population. Are these 7 years realistic enough in order to fulfill these goals?
Well, there are very varied goals among those. First, digitalize public service offer. This is one thing. We have EIDAS, so in principle all EU citizens have a right to have the digital ID since last German presidency when this was decided. So now governments need to attach their service provision, and then we need to make sure that indeed through EIDAS we can handle these services in the European Union. This is one exercise. Totally different exercise is digitizing the economy, the classic economic sectors making use of new digital technologies. Frankly speaking, this is for private sector mostly, and they are doing it quicker where labor costs are higher, which is also obvious why. So if you look at, for example, at Estonia, then digitizing traditional economic sectors in Estonia probably has gone less fast than in Germany, where the labor cost is higher, or in Nordic countries. But we do public service software, everything online. And then the third issue is education and online skills. Frankly speaking, I am of the opposite opinion. Our children grasp it from the air how to, use digital technologies to, use services, communicate, etc. And it's counterintuitive, but in our educational system, we should actually put emphasis on the cognitive skills of remaining kind of compassionate human beings. Because when we were small, we learned these skills just, by exercising daily. Like you went to the shop, you had to buy something, get the money back. Sometimes the lady behind the counter was in a good mood, sometimes wasn't. You learned to read these little signs, which made you part of the society. Our children do not do these things because everything is automated. So I think since kindergarten, we have to really train them to remain members of the society, to strive towards this kind of common network of relations, which for us is natural. So in fact, indeed, they will live in a more digital world, but we need to train them in cognitive skills, which is our competitive advantage forever over machines.
We have a war in Ukraine, and Russia, the aggressor, is known also for its cyber capabilities. But so far, it used in Ukraine only conventional weapons. Shall we expect that the next phase of the war will be cyber warfare?
Cyber also has to be taken in at least two separate parts. One is cyber conventional, which is attacking the systems, like electricity grids, power plants, and so on. If you are going physically to destroy infrastructure, what's the point of attacking it first, cyber-wise? Second part is hybrid, and this is trying to influence the minds of the people. And here we know for years, many people, for example, President Macron, after his first elections, have called out that you meddled in our elections. Same kind of reports from US and so on. And this is far more dangerous. And this, I am sure, is going on. So we need to be very careful here to not to declare that nothing is going on. We have been expecting also in Nordic Baltic region that because Sweden and Finland are joining NATO, there might be these kind of attacks. And after all, we all remember the party videos of Finnish Prime Minister. And the media made it very easy, to promote and exploit those videos. But do we really know why exactly now? We don't. So we need to really stay, really vigilant in following what is going on, and always take into account that it's not simple trolling. It might be far more sophisticated kind of hybrid capabilities, which are being used against our minds. We cannot avoid it. We have just had to learn to live with it.
In 2007, Estonia was under a huge attack, a cyber attack from the Soviet Union. In August this year, your country was targeted again because it decided to remove some Soviet monuments from an ethnical Russian region in Estonia. If we extend this experience at the level of European countries, are they prepared enough to counter Russian cyber attacks?
I'm sure each country by now has an agency which deals with it. And since spring we noticed that they're knocking at the door. The attempts to see what our barriers are were present in a higher number. So we were expecting something might happen at one point or another point in the time. And indeed, the 2007 attack, that was a simple denial of the service attack. And even then, we were able to, within country, to keep most services running. You couldn't access them from abroad. Also, there are interesting elements in this kind of action which are meant to create kind of eerie feelings. Like in this spring, when Estonia, together with our partners and allies, was doing what we every year do, the globally the biggest exercise on cyber. And then somebody scribbled in kind of really schoolboyish letters a graffiti on the wall of NATO Center of Excellence saying "Killnet hacked you." At the same time, there were also kind of ongoing attempts to attack the exercise. which kind of shows that there is someone who is trying to scare, showing, I mean, cyber presence also showing they have kind of a capability to be also offline, visible, present somewhere. We must not be scared, we must be prepared, and this is what we are doing in both cyber and, of course, in the analog world as well.
How is the working together in this field when it comes to cybersecurity? Of course, in Estonia we have the NATO Cybersecurity Center, but at the level of the society, do you feel Europe is working enough? The agencies in Europe are working enough in this sense?
First and foremost, not many people know exactly what is going on. There are many partnerships which have been forged between indeed civil and military structures in Europe and also in NATO. And I am quite sure that they are all developing, trying to be one step ahead of those who are trying to attack us. And I believe that the simple fact that most European banks, most European telcos, most European government services, most of the time up and running, demonstrates that we are having success in defending ourselves.
But Russians have a new weapon, which is old, but it's new in using, called sabotage, and we saw what happened with the gas pipelines under the Baltic Sea. It's hard to demonstrate it was them, but it's pretty obvious it was them. Do you think that the telecom cables that are running under the sea are safe, or is it another vulnerability?
Everything, as we now know, can be a vulnerability, and we realize we are living beside a country which is hostile towards our way of free life, what we have. So we absolutely have to, and we know us and our partners and allies are actually raising security around all critical infrastructure. Also in the Baltic states, we are striving to finalize our departure from the Russian energy grid, because we are still part of that grid. We would be also today able to run alone and quickly resynchronize with the Central European grid area. All these things are going on. We are relatively well interconnected. I believe also elsewhere in Europe, all countries are striving to interconnect with each other, making sure that if one cable, one line, be it in electricity or communication, falls out, you are able to reconnect and circulate whatever you are circulating, gas, electrons, data by another route. And this is very important, but this has always been the principle of grid building. You have to have a grid which is able to compensate for lack of passing current in one element.
How is the population in Estonia feeling about this increasing of prices when it comes to energy and gas bills? Because we see a lot of voices are starting to raise all over Europe, saying it's the fault of the European leaders because they don't make deals anymore with Putin.
I believe that the problem is that for quite a long time, and the regions in Europe differ, but in Nordic and Baltic Nord Pool energy market, quite a little investment has been made into production capability. And the reason for that has been the political signaling. I mean, we go green, then we say gas is not a green fuel, then we decide gas is green fuel, but not for everybody, but for those who can demonstrate they are closing down a coal plant. I mean, how exactly is the market able to build? And this is a specific Nordic-Baltic issue, because Central European big economies, they tend to invest against the voters' wish, and they invest also much more public money. Up north we try to do it market-based, so we lack production capabilities because the signaling has not been clear. There has been no understanding where the market is going. So if politicians are able to remedy that, then I am quite sure that the production capabilities will grow again. On the other hand, it has been possible to use all the old power plants and generators based on the variable cost only, because the capital cost has been incurred already so long time ago that depreciation is not a big element anymore in these systems. So you have now to build new capabilities anyway. So some people say if we build traditional CO2 emitting capabilities, it will be cheaper, but in fact it wouldn't, because capital cost is capital cost. So the worst thing which we could do is now to totally make a U-turn, forget everything about climate change issues and green turn, and revert to what we were doing before. This is not the solution. We need to press forward with the green turn. Meanwhile, the Estonian government is compensating for people the highest energy prices, also for SMEs. This is allowed also under the EU legislation. So all these measures are necessary, but it makes the political signaling again even more complicated. Try to save energy. But while you are not saving it, we are trying to compensate you for using it. So, I mean, you might not actually get all the savings you would have otherwise got. It's a tricky situation, but we just have to go through it.
On the Baltic leaders, you were the one that actually met Vladimir Putin, and you said back then that it's better to talk to each other than to talk about each other. In the current situation with the illegal annexation that Vladimir Putin did recently and the ongoing war and the nuclear threat, do you still think Vladimir Putin is someone to talk with?
The situation is totally different. At that time, Russia's paradigm was that about Baltic states we talk. We talk with Germany, we talk with US about the Baltic states.
Yeah.
And in such kind of paradigm, it is like, I don't want to be on the menu, I want to be behind the table. So talking yourself makes sense. And it is our neighboring country. Even when the corona broke out, I called all my neighbors and informed them I'm closing the borders. I mean, that was kind of a normal, decent thing to do.
Yeah.
But if we now face the situation, I mean, pretending that we have a normal, decent partner is not making any sense. So things have totally changed. But my intention then was indeed to directly talk, not to be the country about which Russia talks with the big ones, which was their intention for a long time, to make kind of, you know, they behind the Iron Curtain countries, they don't matter.
So how shall we treat with Russia in this current situation?
I think we need to understand that negotiating with current regime of Russia doesn't give you anything, because they do not respect their own signature under any international protocol. I mean, starting from Helsinki Final Act, which they inherited from Soviet Union, ending with Budapest Agreement, or even Minsk Agreement. What's the point? I mean, it doesn't make sense. So stopping pretending that we are not living beside a regime which, well, maybe resembles most North Korea, I mean, is the most important thing. I mean, it's uncomfortable to face up to such a notion that this is where we are now. But I mean, not facing up doesn't make things better. I mean, I'd rather we recognize that we have to be firm. And my question is, are we thinking forward? I'm sure Ukraine, with our help, can win this war. Because, I mean, with Western help, we always win. Russia also in the Second World War, by the way, won with Western help. So now the analog is Ukraine. And I'm sure they're able to win. What they will declare as win is for Ukrainians to decide. But it doesn't mean automatically that there is a regime change in Russia. There might be, I mean, leadership change, but I mean, Stalin went, Gulag stayed, as we all know. So without the regime change, we actually should not remove economic sanctions, even if the war is over. You know why? Because there are two options. Either we remove sanctions, allow Russia to rearm, and spend endlessly on our own defense, maybe 3%, maybe 4% of the GDPs. Or we do not allow Russia to rearm, and hence can cut costs there. So even economically, I think it's more feasible not to go back to business as usual.
Considering, again, the current situation and the way that Vladimir Putin reacts, it looks more and more aggressive and more nervous. Does Estonia, being in the geographical position it is, expects any wrong moves from Russia?
Actually, being a border country today is in this sense even safer maybe than it was a year ago, because if you look at the Russian force distribution, then from up north, from Norway, Finland to Baltic states, Poland, everything is in Ukraine. So, I mean, technically you are even safer than you were a year ago. But of course, I mean, with nuclear threats and all this, I don't see what's the difference between Tallinn or Berlin, of course, because I mean, if there is going to be something really reckless is going to happen, then it is not probably linked to the border areas. If we think of Putin's reckless behavior before Salisbury, the Czech explosions. I mean, it doesn't take a common border for something to go wrong. And I think we need to realize that it's free world, democratic world against the current regime of Russia. So where somebody is geographically is in this sense not so important.
President Kaljuilaid, thank you so much for this interview.
Thank you.
Atât pentru astăzi, dar rămânem în continuare online pe pagina de Facebook a emisiunii și pe contul nostru de Twitter. Revenim cu subiecte noi din lumea diplomației și a politicii externe, vinerea viitoare de la 11:30 și reluare sâmbătă după miezul nopții. La revedere!